45. The full board's here. Denise, we have different departments present as well as the press, and the sheriff is joining us up at the table. And our item for discussion that the sheriff wants to discuss, he has described to me just recently under courthouse security as just some generic things about courthouse security and some direction he'd like for the board to give him. Did I capture that correctly, Sheriff?
Yes, sir.
Basically policy and procedures.
And Mr. Bailey, I didn't know if prior to his speaking if there was anything you wanted to say on this because it is a security issue.
No, I've already expressed my concerns about that. If you have a sense of what it is and you're not worried about it, then my concerns are addressed. So if it's generic, we're okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Given the most recent conversation in the last few minutes with the sheriff, I'm not having any concerns, but I suppose if he didn't mind, I could wander around over to where he's sitting, and if he starts to say something that we don't think is appropriate.
Well, I guess, Mr. Bailey, at any time you think that this is something that we should not discuss, you make us aware at that point under a security concern.
Yeah.
Well, I can certainly do that, but to be honest with you, any of you could just as easily do that. My only concern is that we would give out in a public meeting information that somebody might use. So my concern is just liability, and your judgment on whether or not we're disclosing something that is a security issue is as good as mine. So I'll be happy to jump in, but I wouldn't be the only one. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, it's just policy procedures, not confidential security matters.
Okay?
Okay.
Okay, we will proceed.
Mr. Bailey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Actually, what this is just very generic. I'm just looking for direction from the Board of Commissioners as to certain areas and aspects of security in the courthouse that I think we just need some clarification. One has to do with the security door access down by the sheriff's office. Another has to do with office access. Who's got office access to, like, the sheriff's office? And where I'm going there is this. In order to be in the sheriff's office by yourself, you have to be lead certified or CJIS cleared. Does that make sense? Because if you go into that office by yourself, there's so much confidential information in there, we risk losing our licenses, our lead's licenses, when there's unauthorized people in there. For example, you have cleaning crews going in there. If they're not lead's access or CJIS cleared, we could lose our lead's licensing. So I just want to make sure that the accesses to confidential areas, that unauthorized people don't have access to those offices. That's one part of it. And then the other part of it is camera access. I understand that there's a need for anybody in this courthouse to have access to cameras. I just need some direction from the Board of Commissioners as to who's making that decision, as to who's given access, because what I'm being confronted with is I'm having right now, people are putting paper and tape over cameras and blocking the camera view. They don't have and my question is, who is authorizing that? And I think I can answer that, is nobody. What authority does that person have to do that? I don't think they have any authority. I think we have a policy in place here that was written by Under Sheriff Hobble years ago, that if there's a need for access, we go to Under Sheriff Hobble, he will make the decision as to what access you get and allow you access. But who makes that decision, who has access? Is it the sheriff? Is it the Board of Commissioners? Because we're getting an abnormal amount of requests for access to security cameras.
two separate things is why I heard you sort of molded them together is apparently somebody's taken our cameras and put tape over them.
Well, they're putting paper over them, taping them.
Not appropriate, period.
Agreed.
There
Yeah.
is, and maybe I need to talk about it offline, that camera will be readjusted. It's a new camera that was just installed, and that work order has already been submitted for the installation company to come and change that. If it's the one camera I am aware of, I was just
Okay,
aware
so,
of it.
so we may get into some security things that we're getting a little bit too far possible. We have a security committee, we have Denise, Dave, and Paul that's on the security committee, that if that's happening, they evaluate it and bring it to the Board of Commissioners for us to act on. And that can be done individually to the Board of Commissioners, but we have that set up. We have the policy set up. And if you read the policy, the liaison can make that decision for somebody to have, separate from that, to give access onto a computer. So we have some things in place.
Well, you just answered my question. I was not even aware there was a security committee. Had I known that, I wouldn't even be bringing this forward right now. I had no clue.
Paul knows,
He's part of it.
part of it.
He's, the way I understand it, and Grant, you know, I wished I could remember everything we made decisions on verbatim without looking back. But my understanding is Paul's with most things security-wise, within those three, he's the first point of contact, then it becomes Dave if Paul's gone, and if both are gone, then it becomes Denise. That's the way we set it up. And I shouldn't say the names, it was those positions.
Well, that answers my question.
Yeah.
I don't have any more concerns. I
You need to
was
help
not
me
aware of it.
with, I have a question.
Okay.
Denise kind of addressed it, and we maybe not need to dig any deeper, but I am,
I can help with that. You're talking about
You know what I'm
the
gonna say.
cover camera?
yeah,
Yes, what it is Denise, or in the office area, sorry, I didn't mean to say Denise. The office area was, the camera was shining on their computer, and under LEDs, you cannot be recording what's under. So for the time being, we went in there, Junior put the tape on it until we could get it adjusted on the view of what we were doing. Well, we did that actually this morning. We still have some fine tuning to do. We got that resolved, but it's not 100% resolved at this time.
thank you. That's all I needed to know.
I'll throw out one thing. So we did have a security committee a number of years back, and we had a kind of a process and there was some events similar to
Can you
that.
speak up a little bit?
Yeah, there were some events similar to that back then that prompted some decisions by the board and by the security committee. And we as a security committee haven't met in 4 to 5 years, and we've since added a number of cameras, we've added a number of doors, and there are questions and access to whatever it may be, whether it be a door or a camera, or I don't want a camera, I do want a camera, whatever the case may be. And those aren't being brought through the channels of the security committee. And I don't know how they're all happening, to be perfectly honest with you, but they do.
So I'm gonna make a recommendation here for the sake of the fact that we've got a much more invested security system. It's still not complete, but it's much better than it's ever been before. And I would like to recommend that the security committee, as we knew it, come back together and talk about a couple of the things the sheriff talked about, the access off of the sheriff's office door again, and who currently has access, and you know, what have we found? Because we said this would be a learning process, you know, and we find out where we hit it right on the nose and where we might be missing it. So just to address some of those things as a way of getting more up to date on where we need to be, and then maybe make not only a recommendation on what type of position should have access, but also kind of lost my thought there. Anything else in the security realm that we see with our new improved and enhanced camera system inside as well as outside, and the process we go through in order to grant access for whether it's a key issue or whatever it happens to be, just to update it. But I'm gonna throw out a thought that I had, and it comes to, you know, as much as we boiled it down to who is in charge of security, and while we're really lean heavily on law enforcement, I believe it's all of our responsibilities. And given the really good camera system we have and the benefits it's brought us, from time to time, it's no secret, you know, I typically leave around 4 or a little after, so there's still plenty of people. But I found myself more recently being here longer, sometimes after 5 o'clock. And it's occurred to me as I started to walk out the door, you know, no one's here. I'm gonna go take a little walk. And so I would walk and just, you know, I was not looking in offices, just take a look in the hall. And I ran across people that were kind of wandering around and no one else was here, and asked them, you know, can I help you? And typically, the answer was no, and they just left. So what my proposal would be is perhaps putting camera access of our cameras. There's certain places almost no one needs, but for hallway and outside, to put them on everybody's, because it's everybody's responsibility, the security of this building, and it's of utmost interest without getting up physically, because I can physically get up and go walk over here into the end of the wing and take a look. But it'd be a lot easier if I was here after 5, just take a look around, see if someone's around that shouldn't be. I realize others are monitoring those, but I think it's all our responsibility.
And I agree with you, and I have no objection to that at all.
Okay.
The concern that I have, there was a request made to me by a certain individual that said, I need the security cameras. Well, why do you need them? Because a certain individual is in jail, and when they get transported out of jail to a certain location, I want to come down and laugh at them. And I'm thinking, that is absolutely ridiculous. We are not going to allow that
No.
under those conditions. But I agree with you. People have a need, especially when they're working late.
Yeah.
I mean, with the problems that we have had with certain individuals in the courthouse, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because our primary concern is the safety of our employees and the citizens.
Yep.
So those kind of issues, I don't have any problem with.
Well,
Had I known there was a security committee, I wouldn't even be bringing this right now. I didn't know, and I apologize.
well, if the board agrees, I think what we're asking is the committee to come back together and look at all these things and come forth with a recommendation as to improvements that we could make with what we originally had, and any updates to that that'll help us have an even more secure building and facility and safety area.
I'm thinking I can come back and say we need a reserve bill to replace the 5-year-old cameras that are starting, we have no financial wherewithal, since we put in this nice system, to start replacing it and take care of it. So it might become a budgetary thing from this committee also. I see all 3 of them smiling.
It's going to be a good.
Well, there's many things that we should be building reserves on.
Well, we are so
I'll
fortunate to have the camera systems that we have in, and the security. We have a lot of places we would like to have even more security, but it's the best shot we've been able to afford to do things, so it's a positive thing.
I asked Denise for whatever policy you have, and it was just a short thing that passed out. That if anybody have a need, they go to Paul with the liaison approval or whatever for there's 2 aspects. One is to look at something specific, a time, date, etc. And Paul would determine whether that's legal stuff to give out or not.
For the recorded part, yeah.
The other aspect is just monitoring the hallway when I'm here, not after 5 sometimes I do, but I come in the weekends periodically to get caught up because of my travels. I really like to know who's in the hallways. So
Well,
that's 2
one
different
thing
aspects.
that we just incurred, so we've had this system for about 5 years now, and the ID cards for the employees, we've had pretty good success with people not losing them, and, I mean, but it does happen. But it came time that we had to purchase another batch of cars. And so I actually just paid that invoice here earlier this week. That was $1,200. And there is no security fund set aside to pay for that. So I'm absorbing that into the sheriff's fund as part of that. But that's a global cost of the whole building. It's not a sheriff
You're,
cost. So
you're touching on something, Paul, and I hate to get this much in depth on this, but yes, that probably should be something that's in central services, because it's all of the county. Off the top of my head, sorry to talk about your budget. I'll let you talk for yourself. But the other thing is, we have one person that can take a picture and put those together. We're not cross-trained.
Right.
We're not cross-trained. What are we doing? We're smarter than that. So
Right.
you're right. We gotta go to the next level. We gotta cross-train, we gotta get the financial costs in the right department, and we have to continue the security plan and everything to the next level. We've sort of stalemated a little bit. Thank you for bringing that forward, but that's the other part is it's all in one thing. And then if that person's gone, we don't have access to be able to make that card. We cross-train, get the dollars in the appropriate fund, you know, and if that's the appropriate one, and then we cross-train something, just as long as we make sure that we start acknowledging that there's going to be continued and more cost.
Well, every time we add a door reader, or we add a camera, or we add a hard drive downstairs, there's a cost. And Denise has been absorbing some of that into IT, some of it's been being absorbed into the sheriff's office, but what that does is it doesn't allow any kind of tracking. We can't look back and go, what is this costing us, or how, and because it's spread all over the board, and there's.
So I bet you guys make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners of where the.
Well, and I'll take partial responsibility, because the sheriff and I had talked, and he had asked me some of these questions, and the security committee, as far as what I was convinced of, had kind of dissolved. After the project came to be installed and taken care of, there really hasn't been a need or a call, and we haven't had a security meeting since, so
I
as
think
far
there's
as.
been a need and it just hasn't been done, Paul. But that's rearview mirror, we have a need going forward.
But
Yeah.
another conversation that I can, I'll throw out there is dollars available and a recommendation for a permanently installed metal detector for the court security side of it. And so that is, that's part of something that's in the works currently.
So if we can take really good notes to bring back to the board, I'd like to see that committee come back together. The committee never was dissolved, but your point's well taken, because we also have emergencies, and we had a protocol for who checked on who, and it was within those three members that we mentioned, those three positions. So I'm gonna, unless there's a need to do more, I'm gonna call
Good
this conversation probably to a close to let Mr. Bailey go ahead and,
I have a
Do
two
we have
minute
any
mark.
executive?
we are, but we've got another item.
Oh, okay.
Mr.
I
Bailey?
have something for executive also.
Okay.
But before we leave this subject, just reviewing the 2012, department heads can go to Paul and request specific dates, time, etc. with the department head liaison. Of course, we have some people who have all three of us as the liaison, so I believe that 3 of us or 2 of us do that. But just to clarify that not every employee can just go to Paul. It needs to be through the department head with the liaison approval.
Well, at this point, I don't need to be involved at all with the security committee that we have. I don't need any involvement.
We need to reinstate that committee.
So,
They'll meet and report back to you and us and everything.
so, given the time, and Mr. Bailey is on the phone, I'm gonna ask the board if it's okay with you all. We have one more item on the agenda besides any updates wise. I'm gonna ask that we go ahead and go into executive session since, as I said, we do have him, and have those discussions. We'll come back in our regular session and tackle the last item.
Well, for the sake of the media, what time frame do you think, so we can return or not return?
Well, I'll defer to Mr. Bailey. As far as executive.
I don't think it'll take more than 5 minutes, to be honest with you. There's not really a lot to discuss that I haven't sent you already in emails.
Okay. So those that will be remaining as we go out of regular session into executive session under 192.6602H, Mr. Bailey?
Yes.
Yes. Will be the board, Denise, Dave. The press can remain, but they're going to be gagged, literally. And I think that's it. And the sheriff can be excused as well as the undersheriff.